Welcome to NFT Sundays, a weekly conversation around art and technology, brought to you by DMINTI and the Museum of Crypto Art. Hello, and welcome back to NFT Sundays. I am Colborn of the Museum of Crypto Art. I am joined today in exceptional gratitude to you with the artist Rhea Myers. So thank you so much for joining.
Oh, you're very welcome. Hi.
Hi. I'd like to start, as I ask everybody to start, if you would please tell us, about yourself, your journey, and how you came to be in this wild world.
Totally. So I'm from the UK originally. I went to art school in the 1990s, ending up at the Centre for Electronic Arts at Middlesex University in North London. And so I was exposed to sort of digital art, and I soaked up art history, particularly early computer art and conceptual art. And net art was around at the time, but I didn't really understand it. So I wasn't like a net art visionary, unlike some of the people who are now getting involved in NFT stuff again. And then I sort of carried on making art and sort of just using it as a way to understand the world, really, just sort of as the world kept changing around me, I kept on making art, and sort of this led me eventually, after I moved to Canada about 10 years ago, after marrying a nice Canadian, to just to like recognize what I was seeing in sort of very dingy basements in Vancouver, with people being incredibly excited by a new technology, sort of much more so than someone should be excited by, a new widget or a new minor version of an operating system. So I thought, oh yeah, this is familiar to me from the net art era, and I didn't really understand that. So I should look closer at this to make sure, I'm not missing something here. And so, of course, the way I dove into understanding that was making art. And so, like by 2014, I sort of bounced off of making art with Bitcoin in 2011, because everyone who encounters the blockchain has this classic hero's journey structure of they hear the call to adventure and they're like, yeah, I'm ignoring this call to adventure. It can come back later if it really wants me. So yeah, by 2014, I was really immersed in the technology and the culture, and making all different kinds of art to sort of work out not just how the technology works, but to sort of feel my way into the political imaginary behind it, to this very sort of cypherpunk but also post-financial crash vision of an alternative social order with a very specific model of justice. It's a recognizably anarchist model of justice, in that you remove unjust interference in social relations from the state or from an equivalent to the state. So I was digging into this and sort of trying to explain to my nice art world friends that there's something interesting here, and sort of most of them just didn't quite get what was going on there, and they were put off by Bitcoin's strongly libertarian associations, which is more than fair enough. And so I was sort of I find myself trying to create this dialogue between the art world and the crypto scene, which in the way I wanted it to wasn't happening. And then over time, sort of other people who are also from the art world had much more success than me with sort of creating token platforms and art projects, and even sort of art standards. Sort of blockchain standards for artworks and for tokens. And so by 2018, I sort of felt that a blockchain art world had come into being, and I had sort of really, really, really not predicted its precise form, but it was utterly bizarre to then have a blockchain art world to be positioning myself in relation to, having sort of 4 years previously been sketching out in code on the Ethereum pre-release testnet, like the barest suggestion that, maybe there could be a blockchain art world and that this might be good for people in both the crypto scene and the art scene, and the art world, and we should possibly have a look at this. So yeah, that was when I sort of finally really went into NFTs to start making those, to see again how actually existing blockchain art world technology functioned.
It's really incredible, and I think I'd like to trace this story linearly, if we could. I think a lot of the artwork you were creating was putting into the world questions that still persist today. So maybe if you could talk a bit about your first projects on Bitcoin.
Yes, so I crafted some real transactions containing data that was not financial data. Now, I very obviously wasn't the first person to do this. There's an article which you can still find digging through all of the non-crypto transaction data on the Bitcoin blockchain. Like someone hashed the white paper into the blockchain. Someone put, I think, a portrait of Nelson Mandela or something in there as ASCII
Right.
art. So this, people were using this technology, but I was interested in the idea of proof of existence, which was a big idea in the crypto scene at the time. And sort of, it is well understood within the crypto scene what existence is, what proof of existence is. However, there's a lot of mischief you can have, and indeed entire careers you can have, by confusing terms of art between different domains. So existence and proof in philosophy are very, 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 very different from what they might mean in to a competent cryptographer. So I was sort of playing with the conceptual background to this in a way that if you're a philosopher, looks like you haven't understood what existence is, and if you're a cryptographer, you haven't understood what proof is. But this is what you get to do with art. You get to misunderstand concepts, whether deliberately or otherwise, and find creative new uses for them, which other people later commercialize. So yes, I hashed the genome that I got from 23andMe for me into the blockchain. I now greatly regret having got my 23andMe genome doing, but I was young and naive and curious about, my genes. So yeah, I hashed, I placed the hash of that into the blockchain as a way of establishing that someone with at least the same genetics as me had existed from this point on, and that was a sort of very fundamental I exist, I am depicting myself sort of statement, which later, like, I think there were various companies that were like, yeah, we'll store your genome on the blockchain, and I was like, no, if someone does it as art, it's probably a fantastically bad idea to try and commercialize it. And the other one I did like that was hashing the word God onto the blockchain, just to prove that God exists. Checkmate atheists. So again, this is a horrible confusion of concepts, quite deliberately, to illustrate the limitations of the kind of proof and the kind of existence that can be established generally, applied very particularly to the blockchain.
Super, thank you. I'd like to then, I think, go into the extension of colored coins and what you saw with rare pepes as well.
Yes, so I didn't use colored coins. I called project colored coins because, once again, I was being extremely naughty with the naming and concepts from crypto land. But yes, I made some Doge Party tokens. So Doge Party was the Dogecoin based copy of Counterparty, the Bitcoin-based early token system. And altcoins coloured. It's sort of, they're this notional asset. Each one describes not what I think a particular kind of art is, but what I felt the market would respond to. So there's a sort of young East Asian art, a very serious classical European art, sort of very techno Berlin based art, sort of different market segments in a global art economy, which owning either the concept of or shares in would really put you ahead. And so, those were Doge Party tokens. Doge Party didn't take off. Just to continue to illustrate my lack of genius as a chooser of successful technologies. Doge Party being cheaper and faster than Counterparty didn't see it winning out, and the sort of the main service for it went offline until they were revived a few months ago, which was quite bizarre. So I moved the tokens to Counterparty and sort of sent some of the critical coins, which was another one, to various people. And the one that I did make in that series, which everyone always wants, but I can't sell because my wife won't let me, she insists that my soul belongs to her, is my soul, which is a Doge Party, later Counterparty token, representing my immortal soul divided up into 100 fungible units to ensure that my salvation will be efficiently allocated by the market. And this I always raid art history for the sort of visual or conceptual language that I'm using, because it's a hard enough sell getting people to engage with blockchain ideas, and if you have to get people to engage with a sort of a novel visual presentation of them, then you've got at least twice the battle. So I just cheat and use sort of art historical references. But yeah, this was inspired by some work that the expat Soviet artists Komar and Melamed did in the United States in the 1980s, where they set up a company to buy and sell human souls, and then they bought a few hundred souls, including Andy Warhol's soul, which they later resold in Russia. And you can see how this sort of relates to sort of, your soul being for sale under capitalism, or having to sell out as an artist. And sort of people were already worried about blockchain creating new kinds of property, or extending the reach of property, the reach of ownership and exclusive ownership, and the reach of financialization. And absolutely, sort of, if you are someone who believes in souls, then probably the worst possible thing you can sell is your soul. And so sort of taking this example and fractionalizing it, I felt was a nice way of capturing the horror of this, as some people see it, in a playful way, but also in a critical way, because I'm fairly certain that if I have a soul, then it's probably not tied to these tokens. But yeah, it was a nice way of sort of already starting to work with the anxiety of ownership that we see in the blockchain space.
And, I think it's a wonderful segue into kind of really the next stage, which seemed to be rare pepes.
Yes, yeah. So I can't quite remember the timeline, because I think I was using Counterparty before Rare Pepes, but when I met the Rare Pepes guys, just like what they did with the platform was amazing, because like Ascribe predates them, Monograph predates them, my little Ethereum art market sketch predates them, but they created the terminology and the user experience, which sounds very sort of cold, businessy way of looking at it, but like just the the engaging and rewarding and easy and logical and inspiring way that they structured the releases of tokens, that they themed the tokens, that they created a website that you could, browse through generations of tokens and see them. And that was, for me, that just really brought a lot of things together. And it brought it together so much that the next phase of art markets, of NFT art markets, once NFTs became a thing, were called rare art platforms, and people talked about rare digital art, and they had this same sort of curated and presented range of art, very much filing the serial numbers of rare Pepes and presenting it to the world. And the problem was that there was a spirit of deep irony to rare Pepes. It was originally an image board thing where people were sharing the quotes rarest, dankest images of Pepe the Frog, a cartoon character who was claimed by the alt-right before he was reclaimed by everyone else who actually liked him. And so, if you have sort of rare, dank images, then these should be worth something. And so people did sell them on eBay. And then sort of from this, it was a logical next step when this token system came along that could represent these digital images digitally and establish that actually, this image is, which everyone knows is infinitely copyable, is in fact limited edition. You can see how it flows from the original sort of playful image board. I don't want to say banter, but like culture of finding rare images in the sense of fine images, and that then becoming the concept of rarity and the concept of a limited edition. And this all makes perfect sense, and it flows through, and then it's just sort of rubbed out of the record with a gummy eraser when you get to the rare art era. And so, lots of people who are criticizing the idea of NFTs and rare art are doing so in a way where they are taking the idea of rareness, of scarcity, of things being limited edition as sort of first order serious claims. Whereas originally with rare Pepes, they were there in a very playful way, and with the people with art world backgrounds, as Kevin McCoy reminded me on the panel the other month, like we were not into blockchain uncritically in order to make money. I very deliberately stayed the heck away from trying to make money from it for years. We were there because it was a tool to hopefully, provide some actual value to artists, and artists, like everyone else, need to eat and pay rent and get meds, and sort of, if you're an artist, you also need to buy equipment and stuff. And because this technology was produced as the kind of critique of wider society, of the ideas that structure our wider economy, that artists are always claiming they wish to engage with. So there's this big sort of lost memeplex of far more critical potential than the very successful and very useful and very good token marketplaces that people coming in post NFT boom take as a given and as the starting point for their critique, not just of what NFTs are, but of what blockchain art can be. And rare Pepes are a very nice starting point for finding an alternative historical and critical way in to NFTs.
Certainly major precursors to stuff like the right-click save as meme.
Oh yes. Yeah, right-click save as, like, that completely fascinates me. It's like sort of, hey, I can right-click this image and save it, and it's like, yes, you can. Yeah.
Right.
I don't understand. Aha, but I now own the NFT. Well, no, that's the one thing you don't own, because the NFT is a cryptographic signature on a public ledger. And but I've right clicked it and saved it. Okay, look, I totally understand what you are saying. We are not disagreeing here. You've recreated some of the impetus for them. So yeah, it just. But yes, no, that's definitely, yeah. That sort of it's as if like Rare Pepes is more like someone had found a way of turning the right-click save joke into an actual creative community rather than just something people say on Twitter.
I think also precursors to a lot of the remix culture. We see a lot of the CCO movement.
Oh yes, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I was massively into Creative Commons from the early 2000s, and sort of all of my pre-blockchain image work is under a Creative Commons license, except where I'd get hit by lawyers for doing so. And yeah, I mean, they just naturally go together in a way that I think a lot of people don't understand. Like remix culture is a thing. It gets cracked down on sort of every few years, and the landscape we're in now is very different from the landscape at the start of the 90s. But yeah, that kind of exuberant community production is, for me, is very key to blockchain art, the kind of collaboration. Like, so much of my work is collaboration or commission or inspiration. Yeah, it's sort of, that's definitely there. And Creative Commons exists to sort of make sure that you don't have to worry about the copyright law side of things when you're engaging in that kind of creativity. And for me, that's a massively good thing. I mean, if your livelihood depends on copyright, then that's fine. Go and do your thing. But yeah, if you wish to have this kind of playful remix culture, then Creative Commons is absolutely the best tool, legally speaking, for doing that kind of thing, in my personal opinion. Disclosure, I'm a former CC employee, but I worked for them because I like them, not the other way around. And so, yeah, you can create these sort of sharing, remixing communities. And then the thing that NFTs make very different from sharing on platforms is you can detach sort of the reputational side of ownership or patronage from the possession side. So in Marxist economic terms, you're splitting the use value from the exchange value, and the use value remains with the Creative Commons licensed work. Any artist can use it. Sure, any t-shirt maker can use it. But the exchange value of this sort of reputational association with, quotes, owning, end quotes, the work, is just delaminated from it and remains attached to the NFT. There are other models for doing it, obviously, where you get a license with the NFT, which allows you, for example, to use your CryptoKitty commercially if you own the token. And I think that model is also very interesting. Although, as Seth Green has recently discovered, there may be sort of some technical considerations around making sure that you secure your right to use your NFT imagery. But yeah, I mean, for me, the worlds of the commons and of of blockchain property go together in complementary ways, except where they don't. And I'm not particularly interested in the areas where they don't, except to head off, potential problems for creatives, because I don't want artists to have trouble with technology or the law. That's not fun for them.
I think we should emphasize that this was a core tenet of the developers of the protocols as well. Dogecoin being a fork of Bitcoin, and Litecoin as well,
Yes,
and
yes. Yeah,
Tron being
that free software model of forking code, taking a copy of a code base to improve and vary it, is absolutely key to it. And it's been wonderful seeing the social, frankly, political norms of free software inform blockchain development to the point where people simply do not trust proprietary code in blockchain projects as they shouldn't. I've worked on blockchain projects which have had a sort of, we're going to work on this and debug it privately and then we will release it kind of model. And that's, I can understand why we did it like that. But yeah, sort of the norm of working in the open is amazing and so productive. And it's sort of to be extremely political for a moment. It's a product of freedom, the freedom to use, modify, and share the software. And sort of that. This seems very abstract, but yeah, the practical benefit of it is the open source model of working in the open, forking projects, and sort of not being able to cash out of the chain of value that projects hand down to each other. So I would definitely agree that there's a sort of that same spirit of freedom and sharing in there.
I'd like to move now to your work with Ethereum and kind of the conceptual possibilities that the smart contract allowed you to explore.
Yes, yeah. So I learned software development at art school, and I worked in industry for some years. So I didn't have to look at Ethereum and say, oh God, I don't know how to program. I've now got to learn 3 different programming languages. I just looked at it, said, oh God, this should be a more functional programming language than it is. Oh well. And dropped first, I think, was it Sliver, and then LLL, and then finally Solidity into my mental model of where SQL, where SQL would go in a web application. And this has served me well. And just the ability to structure these kinds of representations of aesthetic and social phenomena, which is very airy, but like of being able to make something artistic in the same medium that people would pay for it or interact with it or achieve governance over it, just absolutely fascinated me. And I was very sort of carefully anti-commercial in the early work. So there are, I think it's only the last one in that series where you actually have to put any, oh no, there's a couple before it actually, sorry, where you do have to put ether into it, but it's very clearly part of the conceptual scheme. And yeah, I just started with the simplest possible thing I could think of, which was 1 bit of information. And I started with the simplest possible governance scheme I could think of, which is anyone can send a transaction at any time. That we're all friends here. We all have sufficient capital and education and connectivity to be able to access the blockchain. And you can already hear sort of all of the things I'm saying, which simply don't add up when you say, okay, but this we you're talking about, who's the we? It's like not, very few people can currently get any ether or access to blockchain. Are you sure this is as open and democratic as you're asking? At which point I just sort of look very enigmatic, go, yes, that's an interesting question. Anyway, so marrying up simple information with simple governance with simple aesthetics. A very simple thing to do in art is the old 1960s conceptual art trick of saying, I'm an artist. Anything I say is art, and I nominate that cardboard box as art. And sort of at the time, everyone just goes, it's a cardboard box, why? But then it gets sucked into the machinery of art history and it sells for $10 million at auction 50 years later. But so I sort of put together nominations, single bit of information, simple governance, and did a little contract called Is Art, which any one of you in the public can tell the world that this contract is art or not art, and it will update its display on the internet to say this contract is art or this contract is not art. And rather than the mere whim of an artist asserting that this is art, this is a fact stored on chain and secured by a considerable amount of the Earth's computing resources. So I feel this is much, much better than simply Duchamp pointing at a piece of plumbing and saying, "Oh, this is art now." So that's that sort of spirit of trying to appeal to art world thought in order to sort of direct critical attention, carried on through sort of more and more complex works. There's a palette that you can vote for colours in. There's a system that you can define what art is in exchange for more and more and more ether for how long you want the definition to hold. And so the complexity of the amount of information stored and the sort of aesthetic or art historical information stored, and how you have to interact with the information in order to control it or to govern it. I sort of increase this and increase this and increase this. And when I say increased it, it's like still trivial amounts of information compared to the average DAO in the year 2022. But at the time, it was more complex than the, hey, here's a token, hey, here's a name registry kind of examples that were on the Ethereum website. And the sort of sticking to the minimalism as the rest of the Ethereum world got more complex was deliberate in order to just for people to remain focused on what each piece was doing.
I'm very interested in your take on, kind of all of this being sucked into the commercial machine of the art world.
It was inevitable. My initial mental model for the possibility of blockchain art was conceptual art, which was fairly resistant to the commercial art world at the start. This isn't to say people didn't try to sell the work or didn't travel and exhibit, but the work presented a problem to the smooth functioning of the machinery of exhibiting, selling and collecting art due to sometimes simply not existing. But eventually the art world sort of got its head around this, and now you buy and sell certificates for conceptual art with no trouble at all, and you sort of hire the estates of artists to come along and draw things on your wall for you to make sure that you are actually exhibiting a real wall drawing by a conceptual artist and not just some random example of following the instructions. And so I knew that the commercial art world would sort of recuperate any successful blockchain art scene. So that doesn't surprise me. It certainly doesn't disappoint me. I'm deeply relaxed with artists getting paid for their work. And I don't mind if it is more than minimum wage. I think everyone should be paid for their labour, and, sort of a living wage is a thing. But in the case of artists in particular, so the focus on early work has been interesting, sort of as someone who accidentally produced early work, sort of people saying, "Hey, can you sell me this?" And I'm not sure that I actually have the cryptographic keys that control that anymore. Let me check. But yeah, I mean, sort of the first work I sold at auction rather was the Secret Artwork via Sotheby's, and sort of the money was nice. I'm not going to lie. I sort of went to bed the night before with the little e-paper screen I'd set up to track the price, because I'm a huge nerd, showing one value, woke up the next morning and looked at it and thought the price had gone down because I'd missed that it had actually gone up by order of magnitude. So that was nice. Helped me pay my taxes. But the critical attention was amazing. Getting people from Sotheby's who are extremely literate in precisely the art history that I was trying to hook this into. And so could say, oh, you're referring to this. And I was like, yes, thank you. It's like people don't have to get this, but having the sort of, and I've always spoken to people who have sort of exhibited or curated my work, and they've always had a good view into it. But just getting these sort of, extremely traditional art world understanding some of what was going on was disturbingly validating for someone who spent a while LARPing as an anti-art world
and
activist. So yeah,
and I have to give them credit that first Sotheby's curated sale was an exceptional example, very well researched, tremendous artists, and I think certainly a major and historic moment.
I mean that's down in no small part to Robert Alice, who sort of did amazing work for that. So yeah, that was a successful realization of a good idea, definitely.
So in the remaining minutes we have, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the future of where this is going, and the types of problems that are concerning.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So it looks like we're facing another crypto winter, and I'm sure that people will continue building and making art through that as they have. And we're seeing sort of more privacy-based systems coming in and more sort of more collaborative DAO systems. So I think all of these pressures will lead to a new underground NFT art scene, a new underground art world block scene, which will be absolutely fascinating to see, and will surprise and disturb and disappoint and excite everyone in equal measure. I think that we're going to see people following price charts less and digging more inside the art that they previously just followed the chart of, which is going to be very, very good for establishing art historical value for people who have produced very good work for whatever value of good people are willing to entertain, but who have been sort of painted unfairly by the mainstream reaction to NFTs as, oh, it's just all pictures of animals, or, oh, it's $100 million for a JPEG or whatever this week's misunderstanding of NFTs is. And so, yeah, I'd sort of, I hope that not too many artists lose too much money to the crypto winter, and that sort of they can carry on making interesting art if this is the medium for them, and that they can start to get the recognition they need if that's what they want. And if not, they can drop off the radar, take their work back underground, and do so in a sort of zero knowledge DAO, which will produce strange new forms that we can all come to love.
If I have faith in anything, it's in the resiliency of the crypto community, the artists and the developers who have been attracted to the media.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so, I'm interested as well in seeing, where this all goes, who decides to stick around, who has been so captivated by the form to continue to explore and express themselves through it. And then maybe time for one final question. Any take on the PFP phenomenon?
So I didn't again, I didn't understand the punks. I'm from, like, recently I'm from Vancouver, so I was on stage after the Crypto Kitties team the week they, quotes, broke the Ethereum blockchain, end quotes, and they were very nice people and stayed for my talk. And I've since worked for them, I should mention. So I've sort of watched this build up into sort of ape mania, and I sort of like them. I don't view them as a failure to do one-on-one art. I view them as an interesting way to do a new kind of social iconography. So I view them more as like masks for ritual or drama or, you know, masked ball kind of stuff. So they are sort of tokens of belonging and play and expressions of an attitude. And if you look at them as a sort of an aesthetic spread over 10,000 tokens, and sort of as a focus of like a you know, secret society or cult in the positive sort of Roman sense, or and people listening to this, please do not misquote me on that. I mean it in a very specific anthropological sense. But yeah, they're these interesting visual artifacts with a definite social purpose that make a lot more sense if you sort of step back and look at the 10,000 of them at the same time, rather than looking at sort of two animals looking to the left, looking bored and saying, well, I can't really see that much difference between these. I don't understand why someone would buy this. Sort of step back, look at all of them, look at what people are doing with them, look at the very definite visual qualities they have, often a very interestingly anti-aesthetic to them, and sort of whether there is any lasting cultural or art historical value in there is not for me to say, because I simply haven't dug into that, and I have friends who make them, so I don't want to be mean to anyone or boosting to anyone. But yes, step back, look at the way the aesthetics feature into it, and then you'll get a better feel for what is going on there. And once you have a better feel for what's going on there, you're better placed to actually evaluate it.
Yeah, I just personally find it fascinating how something that was born of so much individual sovereignty and power kind of propagated out to build these groups.
It's like Alan Moore's objection to the end of the movie of V for Vendetta. It's like, yeah, nothing says anarchy like all wearing the same mask, although nothing says anarchy like the black bloc. And so that sort of anonymous belonging to a sort of a larger phenomenon can actually be liberating in various interesting ways. But yeah, there's always contradictions, and blockchain space is no exception to this.
So as we wrap, I'd love for you to share where people can find you, and if they'd like to connect.
Yeah, totally. I love talking about this stuff, so do please connect. I am on Twitter as Rheaplex. That's RHEAPLEX. And you can find my art and stuff on the web at rhea.art.
Super. Rhea, thank you so much for the time. It was an absolute pleasure. I'm Colborn Bell again with DMINTI. Thank you.
Breaking news.